set that very ambitious deadline for the 4th of July. But there's one thing asking you to do it and another thing requiring you to do so. So if you work at one Houston hospital, well, apparently that is the case. So here's a headline: judge ruling in favor of a Houston hospital requiring its employees now to be vaccinated against COVID-19. So basically, here's the gist of the story. A group of 100 plus employees at Houston Methodist Hospital filed a lawsuit against the hospital for requiring them to get the vaccine in order to continue working there. Now, these employees refused to do it. That was a mandate, arguing that the vaccine is experimental and, according to them, dangerous. But a U.S. district judge, well, ruled against them and decided to side with the hospital. So could we see other businesses, not just hospitals, possibly follow suit and be successful? Joining us live now to discuss more about this issue, to give us his legal analysis, is America's Constitution coach and founder of PatriotAcademy.com, Rick Green. Good to see you, sir.
Hey, Miranda, great to be with you. Thanks for inviting me.
So first and foremost, is this, I just have to ask, an infringement on one's personal liberties that some would say is granted to us by the Constitution?
Yeah, listen, we've actually got a rich history of cases where nurses have sued and reserved and preserved the right to refuse a vaccine. And we're talking about vaccines that were not experimental. Here we're talking about one that is experimental. We don't have the research and the data on this for anyone to feel like it's 100% safe. It's everybody's decision, right? You weigh the risk of the virus and what are your chances of being harmed by the virus. And 99.7 to 99.9% of folks will be fine if they get the virus. But there is that small percentage that could experience serious illness or even death. So based on that small percentage, is it worth it to get the experimental vaccine? And we've always let individuals make those decisions, even hospital employees. But this hospital has decided to demand it. Actually, not even for new employees, but current employees. Some of these employees are employee of the month, employee of the year. I mean, these are good employees saying, listen, I just don't want to get it yet. And I might have natural immunity. That's the thing that's ignores, that they're not even factoring in natural immunity, which is even better than the vaccine. So if I was an employer, I'd be saying, okay, wait a minute, if I'm really looking out for my patients, if you get the natural immunity, you're actually better off. We've already seen the studies now. Nobody's getting it twice. You're not carrying it for other people. But if you get the vaccine, we've already seen people share the virus because they got the vaccine, or they get the virus after they've got the vaccine. So why would you not let people go with natural immunity? I mean, you don't even have to have the very low bar cerebral activity of Joe Biden to figure that out.
Well, I mean, this is obviously an issue that we've heard Senator Rand Paul bring up time and time again, but this is a little tricky, right? So this is a privately owned institution. There are public schools that require certain vaccines in order to go there. There are HIPAA laws. So this can get kind of complicated, if you will. Can you kind of break it down into layman's terms, if you will, for this idea of requiring people to do it, private institution versus public institution and whatnot?
That's right. And look, I'm a private property rights guy, private business, individual rights there. You know, government should not be going in and telling businesses what they have to do or can't do. But unfortunately, that's what we've been doing for many years in America. We micromanage the free market, unfortunately, from the government perspective. And we've got very clear law that you have privacy for your health care, and for an employer to demand you to reveal what your decisions have been in this case, or in this case, to make you make a decision you wouldn't otherwise make, violates all kinds of case law that we've dealt with. From a constitutional perspective, we've clearly got rights that are not enumerated in the Constitution. That's what the Ninth Amendment is all about, is that we have individual rights, certainly to our privacy and our health. I would argue to be able to breathe freely without the government forcing a mask on you as well. Normally, we would say you have to have what we call a compelling interest. It's got to be a really, really serious thing, and you've got to narrowly tailor it, and it's got to be least restrictive, all those things we typically argue in constitutional law. In this particular case, this is something that an individual has a right to make this decision. If the employer wants to fire them because they're not willing to have a particular vaccine, then we're talking about opening the door to all kinds of abuses on that with all the other vaccines out there as well.
Yeah, and, you know, we've heard from some governors, for example, the governor of Florida actually taking steps, in fact, to ban what is being described as COVID passports rather. Could
Right.
we see, based on what this judge, how he ruled, could we see this go all the way up to the Supreme Court, in your opinion?
Yeah, in fact, the guy that's handling this case, Jared Woodfield's great attorney out of Houston, good friend of mine. He's already vowed to take this all the way to the Supreme Court. So this thing is definitely not over. This will probably be a bellwether case for the rest of the country since it's the first one in. We'll see what happens with it. I don't think it'll be the last challenge. I think we're going to see this in other areas besides hospitals. And it's actually there is some gray area here. I mean, I can't say that it's going to be black and white where this thing's going to come down or where the Supreme Court's going to go. Amy Coney Barrett had a decision before she was appointed to the Supreme Court while she was on the Seventh Circuit that dealt with COVID. I personally, in reading the decision, didn't think that it was a good decision, even though it narrowly was protecting religious liberty. It was opening the door for a lot of regulation on the government's part without answering that question I was talking about earlier. Is there a compelling interest here? If it was Ebola and 50% of people that got this were dropping over dead, we'd probably have a little bit different scenario here. But we're talking about a virus that 99.7 to 99.9, depending on the study you look at, are going to do fine with. And there's just not a compelling interest for government to force these things on us.
Yeah, and there's nothing to say that someone couldn't lie. I mean, we've talked about reports of people already forging and saying that they have it when they haven't had it. So it'll be interesting nonetheless.
Yeah.
Again, we mentioned a lot of gray area there when you talk about HIPAA laws, private businesses versus public entities. So we'll, of course, continue to monitor that. Rick Green,
Hey, Miranda, if I could,
go ahead,
I'm sorry.
say it.
One other thing, I just want to say, let's make sure, people keep saying follow the science. I agree with that. Let's make sure that we demand of these employers and the government to truly follow the science. They're all leaving out the natural immunity piece right now. Everybody's so focused on the vaccine, and they forget the 35 million people in America that we know of that have had it now have a natural immunity that's better than the vaccine. Let's not forget those folks, and let's not force the vaccine on those folks.
Rick Green, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it, sir.
You bet. Thanks, Miranda.
All right.